The aim is that through these sessions, we'll be unpacking a range of myths surrounding AI, its adoption and integration within organizations. Please feel free to drop any topics or myths that you would like busted, and we'll be sure to include those throughout the series. For today's myth, we are looking at AI that replaces data scientists. There's already a lot of discourse surrounding which jobs AI is going to replace, and the data science community is included in that discussion. There's this narrative happening that, or this perspective that when there's a new tool that's introduced, business is dying to get their hands on the tool, but AI not AI, data scientists stall that for fear that it will replace what they do. So we are having a panel discussion with 3 profound members of the data scientist community, and Matt is going to lead the session and hopefully bust this myth. So thank you, everyone. Please feel free to drop any comments or questions in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Matt Tinley. I'm the Chief Executive of Xian. We are a channel and integration partner of Ecosystem AI. I'm so glad that this is the first myth we're trying to bust. It's very close to my heart. We've spent a lot of time and a few years avoiding the data science community because the early days of us going in and selling Ecosystem was kind of hit by a brick wall. It was very quickly, oh, no, we're building that ourselves. So we very quickly started avoiding the data science community and started going to build up really great rapport and value with business until we met the data science community later. There was a lot of uphill selling then, but it seemed to have been a better strategy. Earlier this year, as part of a sales strategy, we spoke about getting a lot closer to the data science community and invested in their developer site geared to the engineers and data scientists. We've also started attending events that are closer to the community, like DataConf. Next week, we're at the AI Summit, less so the big customer events that we've traditionally gone to, like the AI Expo. And even speaking at the Compliance South Africa event, which is closer to people that really care about AI and the tools and what we're doing with it. Today, I get to spend time with 3 really esteemed data scientists. I'm going to introduce you to them. Is a data scientist leader. She has been building out the Unilever data and AI strategy and practice for Africa. She's been on both sides of the world, having spent time at Deloitte, ABSA, Discovery, and Standard Bank. Also not afraid of some big challenges in her life, founding Social Coding, which was an initiative that brought thousands of learners together, really that reached thousands of learners in rural communities, bridging the gap between data and digital skills. Welcome, Xian. Next, we have Georgina, a data scientist and a data executive. We've spent quite a bit of time with Georgina and seen the work she's done at ShopRite and Woolworths. She's now at a US-based company called Zedge. Georgina is actually talking at one of the conferences that we're going to be quite involved in at DataConf, and she's speaking about a subject quite dear to our hearts and important to us, her hard-earned lessons around recommender systems. How apt. Welcome, Georgina. And then last but not least, we have Ash. Ash has built his career at the intersection of applied AI, machine learning, and business delivery. He's also spent a bit of time on both sides of the fence, having worked at ABSA and Vodacom, and now he's at this amazing company called Xian. And he gets to very firsthand be involved in spending time with me, talking to data scientists, selling Ecosystem. I just needed a little bit of backup because I didn't know which way the ladies would go on this, and I would be on my own. So, Ash, thanks for joining us. We were discussing the idea of getting closer to the data science community. I was chatting to Maddie, and I think she had this conversation with her dad, and she said, we really struggle with this lot. You know, we've got this phenomenal platform that would really just springboard a lot of what they can do, but we're just getting blocked. He said it's very difficult to get the turkey to vote for Christmas. I laughed. I thought, what an apt thing to say. And I'm not calling my panel a bunch of turkeys, but I am going to throw the question out to you. You answer each one at a time. How do you feel about AI platforms?
Hi, everyone. Lovely to be joining this conversation today. Really looking forward to the engagements and the polarizing views we might have. Personally, I will be honest and say, prior to some of the experiences I had, I was anti-AI platforms. simply because I did feel like, oh, they're going to replace my job. I'm not going to be useful anymore. What am I then going to do? And fast forward to 2 years ago when I actually joined Unilever and I started leading a team of data scientists. And I realized the beauty that comes with it. And I found them more to be an accelerator. And it actually helped unlock a lot of value for the business. And I think that's kind of where the mental shift came, because behind the scenes, you don't care much about the business because you just want to build these cool models and display it to the business and all of that. But once you get in the front facing and you start being business engagement, you now start thinking we need to actually realize value and we need to realize it fast. So then obviously the mentality of I don't want an AI system, I don't want an AI platform kind of changed to we need it to be able to realize value fast so that the team can be seen as beneficial. So yeah, that's where I stand right now. Used to be against, but definitely pro them this time round.
Gina?
I had some mixed experiences with this, and it depends on how we define the question. Some earlier career experiences when SageMaker came out and was the hotness and being shown at TFG and other places. We're going to use SageMaker now. You just drag and drop the model you want, and then it does the data science, and then you get the answers. In fact, what we'll do is drag and drop 5 different methodologies on top of the data and then pick the one that has the best fit. That is probably the root of a lot of my deep skepticism around having an interface and drag and drop because of the horrors that arose from that. I think I've got some cynicism from the product marketing side that can be traced back to SageMaker and the general SageMaker experience. You'll notice that SageMaker's been around for several years now, and we're still here. The other side of some of my skepticism around AI-driven solutions is just impenetrability. So why has our recommender started recommending razor blades to people is a question you should be able to find a way to answer. The more layers of abstraction between your data scientists and how the model works, the harder it is to answer that question. We certainly did introduce some of those layers of abstraction ourselves when we started using deep neural nets and those other methodologies that are themselves quite impenetrable. The more layers of that you add, the harder it can be to explain why razor blades are all over your front page. And from a business perspective and from a leadership perspective, on that day, when that executive phones you at home, you need to be able to get those answers quickly. I have often felt that AI is going to stop me from being able to get those answers quickly.
Awesome. Thanks. Ash?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me on this panel. I think it's a very interesting conversation. Honestly, to a large extent, I very much agree with Elmo and Georgina on this, actually. It's a mixed view on it. I just personally have the exploration part of my personality tweaked up quite high, and so I typically like to explore all kinds of different tools and things that one can use in the space. I think I view it from the lens of being a sort of plumber of sorts or a surgeon of sorts, and the more tools I have at my disposal, the easier it sometimes can make solving a particularly complex problem. Having said that, I think on occasion, similar to if a doctor has to do a particular sonar scan and they just cannot understand what the hell's going on behind this machine, and it's just been installed and they have to use it. It sometimes makes that task even harder. Some doctors choose to go old school and just be like, no, you know what, I'll use what I know rather, because then I'm a lot more certain of the outcome. I completely sympathize with what Georgina has said. I do think, though, that in a lot of scenarios, there is genuine benefit to be had. And I think the other part is that there is a lot of effort that folks have put into AI platforms over the years, and the maturity in these platforms is also starting to become more apparent compared to a few years back. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on it.
Awesome, thanks, Ash. So I'm getting a theme that we're mature data scientists, and when we were younger, we might have been quite apprehensive and chosen to avoid the AI platforms. And I suppose that also leans into the fact that the platforms were less mature. But thinking about, there is certainly a large amount of data scientists that aren't as refined as yourselves and haven't had the experiences to choose between the platform and get into that sort of thing. and just avoid it totally. And I'll give you an example. One of our insurance clients, we've got a proof of concept, I'd say on the go, but the data scientist that we needed to provide data to show the proof of concept has avoided getting us the data for almost a year. Now, we've got serious buy-in from executives at this client. We have a genuine use case that is really, really going to blow the lights out and actually show huge value. We couldn't get the data. She eventually did share it with us, but it took 12 months of avoidance tactics. I'd like to learn how to avoid my daughter when she's upset with me, but there is a genuine worry and a concern around these platforms. And if I'm going to engage with somebody like that, let me ask, what do you think the worry is? Is it a worry around job security? Is it a worry about quality concern? Is it ownership of the solution? What do you think the worry is?
I can break down the worry from my side, and it touches on quite a few AI-driven solutions to different things. So this includes AI solutions to assist coding. This is AI solutions to assist with data quality control, but certainly it also applies to data science. There are two pillars of my resistance. One is that feeling of vendors always knocking on the door, right? And they knock on your boss's door and they show your boss the most beautiful PowerPoint presentation and tell them how easy it'll be. Don't you wish it was just easy? And the boss goes, yes, I wish it was easy. This looks great. Why don't we do this? Then you've got this problem where you have to maybe debunk overinflated claims that they've made. You know, the best vendor is knocking on the same door as all the other vendors. And so you can get a bit vendor jaded, for sure. So there's vendor pessimism. It's easy to make a nice PowerPoint. It's hard to make a functioning data product. When you're inside the client, when you work for the company, you're the one slogging in the trenches to make functioning data products. Other people are making PowerPoints all the time that look wonderful. It's extremely frustrating. And so there's a grudge that comes forward from there. There's the exhaustion of having to debunk something for your boss. There's feeling like you've been cast as the person who says no or who says it's complicated all the time. Whereas the vendors get to be the people who say, it's easy, it's beautiful, it's magic all the time. And you feel like an ugly sister. So that's one part of it, the interpersonal dynamics of being inside the company and in the arena versus up against people outside the company who only have to ship slideware. That's frustrating. Then secondarily, we decide to go for it. Their product becomes something that you're accountable for if it doesn't work. So it has to become your product and you have to love it and work with it. That's a tricky transition in itself. So you're looking at it, first of all, as, is this going to be another bad thing sold into my boss that I now have to deal with? And how hellish is it going to be held accountable for what this machine puts out? And once you've reached that kind of mindset, which you can if you spend too much time fighting off vendors, coming across well to that person is going to be a tricky job.
Sure. Ash or Timo, anything you want to add to that?
No, I definitely second what Georgina was saying. I think for us, when I spoke to my team and I said, why this resistance? We have a new product that's coming. It sounds great. And they're like, because everything bad that happens is our fault. And they will tell you, we've invested millions in this product and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Fix it. And you're like, but I didn't come with it. Why must I fix it? And that's essentially why most of them were pushing back at some of these. They were just like, I don't want another baby that I need to look after. And then this baby's not performing. And then I'm looked at as the bad person. Like, hey, we spent 5 million rand on this and we're not even getting its value. Yet we've invested in so much money and you are hired to do that work. When I speak to people that are resistant, it's because you're pushing something on me that I had no say in. You bought into the idea, like Georgina said, based on a nice, beautiful PowerPoint presentation. You never even brought me in to actually vet it if it works, if it's going to do what you want, if it's going to deliver the value. And now you've spent the money and now I need to make it work. I was not there from the get-go. That is one of the big things I've heard.
That's fair. Ash, anything for you?
Yeah, I completely sympathize with everything Georgina and Xian have mentioned. I think those are completely valid concerns. I do think that there's like several aspects to it, right? So in picking a platform, there's a certain warm-up period to learn how to use the thing. And I think there's upskilling and a training component to it, which is quite a schlep on its own, right? So because from a data scientist perspective, you know, there's oftentimes like platforms which you're not sure how how adopted it's going to be in industry. And you then go and spend, I don't know, 3 months or 6 months learning about this particular platform. And that's a skill set that's very limited to that niche or that scope at the time. And that also makes that challenge harder for the data scientist, because you're spending a lot of time learning something that you're not sure what value it's going to bring in the long term for your career or for other use cases. In my opinion, the job security part is a little bit less from the platform perspective. I honestly have a lot of job security fears from the LLMs, like platform or no platform. I mean, there's a bunch of open source ones that's out there and they can write code, which when I was a graduate, I struggled to write for weeks and I can do it in 5 minutes. I think less so from the platforms, but the ownership concerns around having to debug and fix something that's hidden behind this great big wall is a massive challenge, especially when use cases are in production. I think it's very daunting to know what to do next. I think those are bigger concerns from my perspective than the job security angle. Also, maybe something else to add is there's this thing around tool sprawl and a lot of things that have overlapping capabilities. One might have spent, for argument's sake, 6 months learning tool A, and business has now approved tool B. As the data scientist, you need to master this new thing all of a sudden. That adds to the complexity because you're not sure which way to go. So I think there are a lot of genuine concerns around that.
Thanks, Ash. I did see Jess had asked a question, and I'm sure it's specific to this. So I'd like to take Jess's question and then move into how we can collaborate better with business next. So Jess, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. I typed it out because I get super nervous. Presentations, I'm fine, but questions are like, so I actually want to answer the second question first, which is, would you prefer to be sold products that actually help you build better? Like Ash already mentioned an LLM that codes, that helps you to then manage your own outputs better rather than solving your problems for you. And then the other question is, if you could build your own product instead of being sold one, what would it actually look like? How does that differ to what you're being sold constantly? I hope that makes sense.
I've got to let everyone know that if you didn't realize, Jess is very involved in the marketing and the direction of the marketing ecosystem. So I think they're phenomenal questions. I want to know the answers too. Ash, go for it.
I think it's just that, very interestingly, I've sort of noticed that the deeper someone is in building AI products, whether it's at a particular organization or a startup, those deep AI techies tend to use the absolute most ridiculously open source, no platform tools do their work. I don't know them personally, but I'd be pretty surprised if the folks at OpenAI, genuinely use GPT-5 or any of the others to actually write their code, especially the deep techies, the ones getting paid like $100 million or whatever. I suspect they are probably like Emacs and Vim going away at terminal themselves. So I think there is that sense of, yeah, sorry, I'm just laughing at the comment Jay made, but I think that's one part of it, that the deeper one gets into it, the more they want to have the ability to use the raw tools, if you will. Which are...
Anyone else?
I'll go for it. I think if I had to choose between something that's already built and something that I can use to build, I think I'd want a combination of both. And coming from a tech background, we all know there's certain things you really don't want to get into. You just want to, the business wants insights. You don't want to sit now and just build dashboards, pulling things that are already there. You just want something, click a button, they've got it. They want to adjust something, you click a button, they've got it. But I also think from a mental stimulation and wanting to challenge yourself, you still want to be able to build. I think that's the fun part about being in a space like this, where you get to build things that haven't been built before, or things that can help solve a business problem and actually actualize the value of it. And I think having a bit of both counts for both of that. And I think generally for myself, I think it's better to use the AI that is pre-built for things that are very simple, like your basic analytics, where most people don't want to spend their time on, and just give them time back to focus on the things that matter and things that actually stimulates them mentally and kind of pushes them, because no one wants to be employed to just do the boring stuff. We all want to be challenged and do the fun stuff. So yeah.
That's fair. Anything to add, Georgina?
I think the sales struggle that you have and the internal career struggle that a lot of data scientists have is like, where is your perimeter of what you would build and what you would use? And it's different per person. I know where my perimeter is. When I build out a dynamic operating model for the costs and revenues on some of our generative AI products, when I build out that model, I do not want to build Excel. I want to use Excel to build the model. When I built out a giant recommender system at ShopRite, I built the model in that I wrote lots and lots of PySpark code, but I used libraries that other people had made. I didn't want to make my own library. That was my perimeter for what I wanted to build. A data scientist in the chair next to me might have gone, what, you're using a standard library? Oh my God, no, I would build my own. And maybe they would have gotten better results, but the perimeter is different for different people. When you are suggesting something that would overtake that perimeter, and you say to me, don't worry about your generative AI product costing model, click and it'll do it automatically. I don't like that. Nope, I don't understand how it works. I can't trust it. And if I'm held accountable for what it says, I won't know what to do. The perimeter of build versus make is going to be different developer to developer. And that is your sales challenge. So Jessica, if you want to hang out with me, I can talk for hours.
I know. That's super helpful because the area that I wanted to lead into is how do we get better collaboration between business leaders and the data teams. From what Seymour was saying, bring me in later, you've sold to my boss, so this is the theme I'm hearing, and now I'm being told to take on, not evaluate, take on this tool and make it work for me. What you're saying, Georgina, is there's different parameters. For somebody that needs to speak that language, to learn the nuances of every data scientist would be quite tricky. Can you give me some ways that we could reframe the conversation? Let's bring the data scientists closer in, maybe invite them to the initial conversation where we're chatting to, let's say, head of fraud, head of loyalty, and we're pitching the business value of the AI platform. When we bring the data science community into that, how do we bring them in and bring them in as allies that will support this conversation? And how do we reframe that conversation? Anyone can pick it up, whoever's first.
I'll give it a stab. I think biggest thing for me is always start with the bigger picture. What are we trying to solve for? Once we know what the bigger picture is, bring all the parties in and let them be involved. Don't segregate people and say, this is just a business talk, or bring in the techies after. Bring them into the business talk and understand what role they will play in giving that business what it wants. Whether we're trying to save costs, retain customers, get new customers, whatever it is, bring them in. Allow them to poke holes at the tool. What I've also found is a lot of the platform builders don't want you to poke holes at their tools. It's like, don't you dare come for it. It's my baby and it works. You must just trust me. No, let me poke holes. Let me understand what's behind that model. Show me the source code if you can. Explain to me the logic, because at the end of the day, you're going to bring this tool into our platforms, and I need to be the one making sure it integrates with our current architecture. It works perfectly fine. But then at the same time, I must still actualize the value. So if you're not bringing me in, I can't defend this tool and I can't use it well. So I think those are the big things for me, is have everybody in the game from the start, but also be open to criticism. Maybe there's something in there that you guys need to tailor for our specific use case. Then you will be able to do that because we're able to poke holes at what you're presenting in front of us.
You've got the cheat sheets, so Georgina. I'm joking.
As a sales strategy, you probably need a data scientist ambassador. It might even be a different deck. And so you can put everybody in the same room, and I respect that very much, and I think it's good for trust and transparency. This everybody in the same room approach is great. I've had a lot of meetings with a lot of people in the room. It would help dispel one of the emotional problems underlying this, which is, are you trying to get this tool because you hate working with me and you wish you could just ask a robot to do it instead? Do you wish you could get rid of me? Is that what this is? That can inform a lot of the baseline hostility in a meeting like that. So everybody coming in together is more transparent and can build that kind of trust. Separately, if you were to put people in different rooms and give different presentations, there is the possibility of having more of a data science ambassador for your product say, hey, how much do you really enjoy data cleaning? You don't, do you? Okay, imagine if you didn't have to do that. What are the parts of your job that you love doing? What are the parts of your job that you hate doing? Put it on the board and then just start talking about what they hate and talk about how your product minimizes how much time they would have to spend on that. And then they get to spend more of their work hours doing the work they find stimulating. if that's what your product really offers. But your product better really offer it, because you'll have a room full of skeptics and people ready to argue. I imagine you've met a data scientist before. I think a parallel sales strategy could be an interesting approach, where it looks at daily pain points in the job and what your product does to actually ease those pain points so that they can do more of what they love and steer their career more in the direction they want to go in.
Awesome. Ash?
Yeah, I think that's an extremely valid opinion. Sometimes what helps is when one can play with the thing. So you get a bit more comfortable with the idea of how it moves, what it does, and it can oftentimes allay a lot of the fears or paranoia about how it might react to a particular scenario, and also bring about more nuanced questions from the data scientist. In this particular scenario, we see that this tool has a gap. Having that ability to let people interact with it is probably very valuable as well. I think in closing, bringing the data scientists closer and understanding their pain points, and I think, like Georgina mentioned, even getting a sense of the different parameters in that particular group. What is that threshold and the kind of things that people like? Because I think it's also important that, you know, if it so happens that in that particular group, crude example, let's say everyone happens to enjoy data cleaning and the AI tool automates data cleaning, then it's a lot more difficult to land. I think it's quite important to empathize and understand that component. The other thing I'd say is one of the helpful things might also be to get to better grips as to what is preventing the data scientists from delivering value. One of the aspects is what they enjoy doing, but when it comes to delivering value, what has been their challenges? Because I think in a lot of environments, yes, George, that is true. I've also met a bunch of people that do enjoy that. I think when it comes to delivering value, a lot of data scientists have tons of stories, and it's like, oh God, in that particular use case, we ran into this problem and that problem. I think understanding how they've interacted with business previously and how those gaps can be fulfilled by a particular tool can also be quite helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, Ash. I want to try and understand, and I'll put it to all of you. You've all been part of building and buying platforms, and Timur, you spoke about a combination, which is kind of what we believe in as well. And obviously depends on what you're trying to solve and how you're trying to solve it. But using the real life example, can each of you talk about the criteria you personally use when you choose buy versus build, or a combination of both? And real life examples where you have adopted a platform that has given you the results that you were quite happy with.
I can't go first because I'm still going to have to think of an example where I got results I was happy with.
I can go. So I'll speak about one of the products brought to us by my former employer, Deloitte. When I joined Deloitte, they were pitching a product/platform to our executives. And it seemed great because it was going to help amplify speed to delivery, basically. And it seemed like a great tool. It sounded amazing and was going to solve quite a lot of our data problems. But I think the biggest lesson I learned with that is we went in with a lot of things not answered. Let me just paint the scenario. They come in and they're basically going to build our data lake because the data lake was a mess. So they said, we've got this, we can plug it on top, and we'll basically solve all of the mess that you guys have, which is great because everyone is trying to find where the data is coming from, where it's sitting, who's the source owner, all of that. So they said, we can do this, and this is how we'll do it. Then it came the conversation of, okay, now this is going to be great. It's going to be integrated into our current ecosystem. So does this then mean that we will be married to you guys forever? So say now there's something that changes. We now need to call you guys to say, hey, we need this enhanced. And they're like, yes. But then the conversation was, no. We thought you guys are coming in and you're going to give it to us and you're going to show us how it's done. And then our team will continue with this going forward. And that then became a problem where sometimes you come in and this platform is great and it's going to solve everything you want to solve. But now the problem becomes we're married to you forever. We always have to pay a licensing fee. And I mean, it's great for them because it's ongoing business. But for the team at hand, it sucks because that means you guys are never able to do anything outside of this because you're so reliant on it. It becomes that thing of how many people are we going to be married to? At some point, we need to have our own things that we own, control, and change. Unfortunately, because of all that back and forth, we ended up having to decommission the whole thing because we couldn't come to an understanding, because they were just like, you need to marry us. And they were like, no, we don't want to be married to you. And it was just like, okay, you know what? Let's divorce and leave it at that. So I think that's something we need to take into account with all of these platforms. Are we now forcing these companies to be married to these platforms forever? And if they're married to them, what if something better comes? How do we then dissolve that marriage and move to something better? Or can we now build on top of that and build something better? And then we realize we don't need you. Then what? Yeah.
Cool. We're talking about monogamy and polygamy. Georgina, is your answer formulated? Ash?
It is. It is. I've got something.
To you, and then we've got Ash next.
I've got good stories. I realized why I couldn't think of good stories. It's not because nothing good has ever happened to me. While I have some memorable failures with vendor-supplied data products, for sure, and those are deeply inked on my soul, the reason I couldn't think of happy examples and outcomes was because they instantly became part of the territory of, well, we buy that, we don't build it. So they instantly became invisible, like Excel. So actually, now that I think about it in terms of the things we use, because of course we use them, God, why would we build that? We had a massive adoption program for DBT. We hadn't been using DBT. We had been mimicking DBT by trying to be very structured in how we created all of our GCP jobs in BigQuery. We had been deriving DBT from first principles manually and trying to be as good as DBT by promising to always name things a certain way and store our boilerplate code in a certain place on Confluence. Then you just use DBT and you pay whatever it costs because it does it properly for you. Reminds you if it's not working, and it visualizes things. So DBT was a massive success, and it instantly became invisible to me because why would we ever not use that? No, don't do that manually. And the second one was our data catalog, which I think is called Data Hub. And by using Data Hub, I realized how much of Data Hub we had been doing manually in Miro boards, in Google Sketches, showing lineage diagrams to try and explain things and document things and show them to our auditors. And along came a program that handled that automatically. And it was life-changing to our team. I don't care what it costs, we keep paying. I never want to break up with them. For God's sake, they're a utility now and completely invisible. So maybe this is a bias you'll encounter among the people who advise on and decide around vendor purchases. The failures are so salient, memorable, and legendary, but the successes vanish because they just become a utility, like the roads, the electricity, the DBT. Of course, yeah, Gmail. I didn't write my own mail client. It becomes invisible infrastructure if it's successful.
Thanks. Ash?
Yeah, I think that's valuable insight, Georgina. Maybe just a couple of points around this. So in terms of buying and building and when it might make sense, if the data team has constraints, whether it's in terms of the resources they have available or there's a very particular delivery timeline that they trying to deliver a particular product on or set of use cases, it can oftentimes be an augmentation that accelerates their capability. A lot of people, especially if they're working overtime and long hours, might be very comfortable with the idea that if something automates the hellish part of the work, let's go for it. There are, of course, organizations that have like a full data complement, if you will, that's able to build everything theoretically. But I think even in those organizations, there's often pockets that don't end up being able to access that capability, and they still end up using fairly manual and longer workflows that aren't necessary. So in scenarios where the data team is struggling to deliver at the pace of business, it definitely has value. The other thing is if that particular AI platform has a capability that team doesn't have the capacity to build. In recent times, large language models have really taken off, and there's agentic AI coming in. There might be more complex deep learning models or reinforcement learning models not within the capability of that particular data team. And in order to build that takes a very long period, because architecting for it, doing the necessary R&D, I think there's a lot of components to it that from a business value perspective will just take a ridiculously long time. And so I think in that scenario, exactly, GraphDB is an excellent example. And so I think there's a lot of scenarios where buying there can also make sense. An example of Georgina's point around it disappearing into the background is very valuable, because I was also struggling to remember the name of the tool because it had disappeared. There was a particular scenario where on day one, when I was sort of involved in building our data platform, there was a lot of ETL work that was necessary, from one country's servers to all kinds of funny cloud and this and that. And there's a lot of manual work I did, and it was a real pain. It was absolutely terrible. And along came a tool that did the ETL for us, including the folks involved with me. I believe that particular platform cost an arm and a leg, but we were very grateful because once it came in, marriage component I spoke of was tight-knit. You can no longer function without them. If they don't have that tool up and running, everything stops. There is that reliance, but in that particular scenario, in terms of the long-term strategy, there was a longer business view they had with that company, and it worked out well, and they were able to support us when we needed. It was definitely very useful.
I'm going to pause here for any questions from the audience. I've got a million more questions and thoughts on the subject. Are there any questions from the audience?
No, there's mainly just been comments.
Cool. Okay, then I'm going to look at a question to try and wrap things up a little bit. We came here to bust the myth. In your own terms, you've already kind of given me the idea that data scientists are certainly not going anywhere. In fact, the ecosystem was built for the data scientists, by the data scientists, by data scientists. We're actually all peers, if you think about it. It would be crazy for Xian to hire the data scientists and machine learning engineers we've got and then get them to help sell a platform that's going to take their jobs. So in your own words, let's talk about AI platforms going forward, because you think about marriages and joking with about polygamy and Jay threw in the comments, oh yeah, like Microsoft. There is certainly this sort of vendor lock-in worry, but AI is accelerating so quickly. And I think what I love about our ecosystem is architecture. It's got this worker architecture that you can swap out certain things. If something's not delivering, it can be swapped out. Some clients want one platform that does everything, and that's the spoil that AWS and Microsoft have given you. So they're actually putting out their hands and going, cuff me, please, vendor lock me in. How do you see the world of data science and platforms moving forward, especially at the pace that there are now even more AI platforms to manage AI platforms? I mean, we're building out Ecogentic, which is the AI framework to manage the LLMs that we are going to be working with in our clients to help them with using LLMs in corporates, right? So in your own words, Georgina, Ash, how do you see this world sort of coming together and going forward?
I think I'll start with the same that says, jack of all trades, master of none. And I genuinely don't believe that you can have one vendor that can do everything so well. If we are going to get married, then it has to be polygamy. We have those that are really great. So for instance, but GCP. Okay, yes. There's certain platforms that are great for mining data. There's certain platforms that are great for storing data. There's certain platforms that are great for visualization. So I feel like choose the ones that works to your benefit, one, and that speaks to the business needs. Some businesses are very matured in their data journey, and yes, they are able to work with big AWSs. Some have not even started, and that's where then you come up and, you know, some of the products built from some startups are where they need to start. So I don't believe there is going to be that one platform or that one vendor that you're married to and they will be able to solve everything. I think you definitely need to firstly understand where your business is in terms of data maturity and the products that it needs to build and use. And then two, now you start thinking about, okay, which one works best for the needs that I want to address?
Remind me what the question was?
How the AI platforms and the data scientists are going to be sort of merging together and what the future looks like. Does it look like this sort of one platform solves everything, or is it many platforms, or how do you think it'll work in your world for the next sort of 10 years?
Very hard to say because a lot of that stuff is changing at the moment. My company just had a massive workshop on N8N so that we would all be trained how to use N8N because this is how we're going to do it. Well, it's been 2 weeks since the workshop and they're already looking at possibly, it might not be N8N because there's actually something that's just come out that does that for you. So why are we learning that then? Which means I can close the 2 browser tabs I was using to try and learn it and wait for someone to tell me what the next thing is I was supposed to learn. I think the job of being a data scientist will evolve a bit. I'm a bit of an LLM skeptic. I'm not sure that it'll be writing our code for us. I think certain use cases of AI are incredibly powerful, and then the other 80% will turn out to be duds. The use cases that are powerful will become invisible utility, and data scientists will use those the same way they didn't code their own Excel. They won't write their own for that, and they'll continue to write for the new problems that emerge. So it's kind of a wait and see at the moment, but as a sales job, in terms of if you want to make turkeys vote for Christmas, I don't think it's turkeys and I don't think it's Christmas, to be perfectly honest. I think it's inviting them to join the hunt for the next invisible utility that will take drudge work away from them and let them focus on more new and important things. By taking away that area of drudge work that was appropriate to automate, they can focus on their careers adapting to what the new landscape is. I think that's a powerful way to speak to data scientists, as this does free you up to be adaptable in your career that you're worried about. This actually helps you do that.
I'm going to take that snippet out and use it. Thank you. Ash, I know we've got a minute left. Can you quickly wrap it up, and then I'm going to hand over to Madison.
I think a very important component of it is that it's like with anything, right? If you say social media, for example, we end up having a number of social medias, like different apps that we end up using. It's very difficult to say that we'll end up on the one big platform. I think that's almost impossible. There's going to be specialized tools that definitely deliver value that's not comparable to the generic platforms. But I think it's also about how closely business gets into it, right? So from a strategy perspective, we're going to introduce tool A, and what is its purpose and its scope, and how do we see its lifespan over X duration? I think that's a key component. Even before businesses engage with vendors, one of the things that they might want to do is just get closer to their data scientists internally and just get a feel for, what's the guys' concerns and what's happening. The landscape, like Georgina mentioned, changes so quickly that it's difficult for business strategy, which is typically on a much longer time span, to pivot constantly. The role that some technical leads play inside companies has become crucial in advising how to mitigate some of these challenges. Thanks, Matt.
I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the three of you. It's been such an awesome chat, and we certainly have busted a myth. We want to continue busting myths, and thank you to Ecosystem for the platform, and over to you, Madison. That's job done. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I consider that myth busted. Thank you so much, everyone.